Reform Press Conference for April 11th, 2025. Joining today's presser is Mr. Sherwin Benjamin, General Secretary of the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. Ganesh Maipal, Member of Parliament, Shadow Minister of Regional and Local Development, and CC member, Mr. Sharma Solomon, His Worship, the Mayor of Linden. Today's press statement will be read in two parts, and we will begin with the reading from Mr. Ganesh Maipal.
Thank you very much, Shanika, and good morning to members of the press and the viewing public at large. The PNCR APNU, as the next government, reiterates its commitment to guaranteeing livable and living wages to workers and an income that can promote all positively. As the PPP government sporadically and desperately announces its intention to pass on a few inadequate entitlements to sections of the population, let me use the opportunity to pledge to all Guyanese that we, as the next government, will ensure all workers, both in the public and private sectors, receive living wages and all households receive a livable income. We are confident we can achieve these goals within our first year in office. Beyond our first year, we will press on with our plans to further transform the lives and livelihoods of Guyanese to ensure that they have opportunities, freedoms, and capabilities to be the best they can be and to do the most they can do. The PPP's sporadic, inadequate, or one off measures will do little to ease the cost of living, ensure food security, eradicate poverty, raise living standards, and guarantee a high quality of life. As we are all aware, the PPP is not interested in these goals that put people first and at the center of development. Its recent announcements on entitlements are purely desperate moves as it caves into the widespread public frustration and opposition pressure in an election year. Already, its NIS one off payments are being criticized as unjust and deceptive as they amount and account for only a small portion of what workers have actually contributed over their working life. Its increased subvention to local councils will not even cover the garbage collection budget of many will not even cover the garbage collection budget of many of them. Guyanese can expect a few more of such gimmicks that shortchange the people and do nothing to transform their lives. Let us also highlight that these recent announcements expose the PPP's inability and indifference to formulate strategic and holistic plans. The development of our communities countrywide requires much more than increased yearly subventions. In addition, communities need to have developmental plans. Councillors need to be paid a proper stipend. Local governance needs to be improved through training and upskilling. PPP political interference needs to be terminated as residents need to be re-engaged and remotivated. Similarly, while the decision to pay the full examination fees for all students writing their CSEC examinations will be welcomed, especially by struggling families, the nation still awaits a proper plan to attract and retain more teachers and to improve student performances. As time runs out on the PPP regime, we will see not only desperate acts that will do little to help families, but also acts that will attempt to stir up social, and political unrest. The recent events on the Essequibo Coast, Quarantine, and Linden speak for themselves. We call on Guyanese to stand united and focused. With these coming elections, they have the power to usher in a new dawn. Under the PNCR, APNU government, Guyana can become one of the best countries to live in for all its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. His Worship, the Mayor of Linden.
I thank you very much, Shanika. And let me just, before I go, express to the families of the two young men who were killed in Linden over the period of the 17th and the 18th our sincerest condolences on this tragic event that occurred on the 17th and the 18th of April 2025, resulting in the loss of lives of in the Wisma community. Our thoughts and prayers are with the family and their loved ones at the moment of Mr. Peters and Mr. Fogene. On the 17th of April, a young man within the community of Kansas City, Wisma, Linden, Mr. Ronaldo Peters. Unfortunately, the incident involving Mr. Peters with an unidentified officer, where the following day of that incident, information released by the Guyana Police Force contradicted the incident that occurred on the 17th, which outlined that an unidentified officer in an unmarked vehicle came in the presence of Mr. Peters with a single round in less than 100 meters, wounding Mr. Peters and dragging him to the vehicle of that unmarked officer. Mr. Peters was alive, in contradiction to the message that was issued by the Guyana Police Force. At this time, the council is with the family of Mr. Peters and Mr. Fogene, with the resulting of the statement issued by the Guyana Police Force created an environment of uncertainty that promoted an era of confusion, which resulted in a protest action, subsequently resulting in the loss of life of Mr. Dan Fogene, an unarmed young man returning from work from Georgetown and was shot and killed with one bullet by the Guyana Police Force, who were at the time manning the crowd. We acknowledge the pain and frustration of these events and the cause of which it caused the community of Linden to demand the presence of the President, Irfan Ali, who visited the community at the demands of the family and outlined a few commitments that were made on behalf of the family by the municipality and others who were present at the meeting, including MP Amanza Walton Desir. In addressing the demands and requests were made, including the establishment of a prompt and proper terms of reference to outline the investigation that must be done. We remain committed to ensuring that in that investigation, full cooperation is given by the family and all those who witness what occurred. At this moment, the family expressed their concern of the nature of such investigation without proper terms of reference. Today, at 6 a.m., an autopsy or two autopsies were conducted on both Mr. Peters and Mr. Fogene. And at the moment, we are providing legal support for the family to have an understanding of the way forward. At this moment, the community of Linden is holding firm to our position that justice must be served for both Mr. Peters and Mr. Fogene, and that those who perpetrated these heinous acts, members of the Guyana Police Force, must be held accountable for such action. We await the investigation. However, we continue to echo the concerns of not only the family, but the community of the course of the investigation through the provided independent body, the RSS, as suggested by the President at the night of the 18th. We look forward for those investigations, but we do look forward before for the terms of reference that will outline the nature of such investigation. At this moment, we ask that Linden and the rest of the country take the opportunity to embrace the family members, to give them the support and comforting that they need at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just a quick correction from His Worship statement. Every time he said the 17th, he meant the 7th, and every time he said the 18th, he meant the 8th.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. At this time, I will open the floor for questions on the press statement. Mr. Adam Harris.
Very good morning, all. This is for Mr. Solomon. What is the situation in Linden today? 2 days ago, there was protests in the streets of Wismar. The fire at the sandpit, was it deliberately set? So what's happening as we sit here today?
The situation on the ground is one where we have a level of where persons are waiting to see what comes out of the next few days, including today the autopsy. I know there is a level of calm among persons who are um, interested to know where this situation will unfold, more so with the commitments given by the president in terms of an investigation. I think those things will continue to keep persons not only informed, but calm to the point of understanding that there are outcomes towards a course of justice. As we speak at the moment, I think coming out of this morning's autopsy is very important, especially for Mr. Fodgeny, as it relates to where the shot came from and who probably would have committed this act in terms of any ballistic test going forward. One of the things to note is that the inflaming of this matter is a direct result of the Guyana police force and the actions of officers who perpetrated these acts in terms of not only their actions, but the statement that followed immediately after the gunning down of Mr. Peters and the suggestion not only that he was a wanted man, but that the police who perpetrated this was in uniform and identified himself. Those things came out in the official statements until video evidence would have contradicted that. So those sort of behaviors would have outlined and would have left a sense of uncertainty within the community in terms of the sincerity of the police to conduct an impartial investigation. And as such, the demands were made for an independent investigation. I think those things moving forward will determine not only the state of what we see to some extent calm, but moving forward in terms of persons appreciating that a course of justice is being pursued.
Thank you.
The question on the sawmill, sir.
On the sawmill, as far as we are aware, it's unrelated. I am aware of the environmental situation existed prior to the fire erupting at the sawmill at Amelia's Ward. The council have had reasons to issue notices to millers in terms of how they are disposing the waste. The waste disposal is occurring in a gully that extends maybe just over 200 feet in depth that have now turned into a pit in terms of the inferno that is occurring with the wood material. So after a period, the heat and the temperature would have ignited as far as we were told by representatives of the Guyana Fire Service. And to date, the persons who are in the vicinity have recognized that it was not deliberate, but more environmental. Nevertheless, it remains a very, very unfortunate matter that currently is occurring. We continue to appeal for wider help and support. I recognize this morning to see the intervention of some new fire tenders arriving from Georgetown, limited, of course, because the fire would have spread. As I said before, this is a situation that over decades of materials being deposited on each other, and it is now being engulfed, and it is now threatening to consume not only the pit, but surrounding vegetation and homestead within the vicinity.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, then Shabal
One
Demarade.
second,
Certainly say,
Mr. Shabral. One
oh,
second.
sorry.
There was Miss Davina's hand was up waiting a while now. I'll have her go and then you can go. Miss Davina? For some strange reason, she has popped off. You can go ahead, Mr. Shabral.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Sir, can you say what essentially is the idea behind seeking legal representation with respect to the killings? What are you hoping to achieve? And is there any involvement by the families or the representatives in terms of crafting the terms of reference? And thirdly, uh, given the fact that notices had been issued with respect to the disposal of the waste for some time now, why wasn't any action taken to enforce the necessary rules or regulations so that those persons who are found culpable should have been made to take action with respect to the waste or even the removal of the waste?
I think in any matter such as these, where persons have been killed by the state, especially the coercive arm of the state, it is important that they have within the family some level of legal support, legal counsel, and legal advice. I think that is where the matter is at the moment. I've spoken to both families. I have had the opportunity, as of this morning, to engage the family of Mr. Fodgeny, and they are at this moment ensuring that they pursue that direction and whatever support which they have requested, including that, not only we will continue to give, but we will continue to advise. So that is where that particular issue is with the legal matter. In terms of the terms of reference, we remain quite unsatisfied with the president's commitment to ensuring that we have clearly crafted how this investigation will be proceeded with, which would be done more so once we have clear terms of reference to establish. And like I said before, if there is an independent request, and there is where the families are interested to be a part of, then they would like to know how can they liaise with that. If it's independent and being suggested that it's conducted by the RSS, where the family members recognize the history of the RSS with reference to the investigation with the Henry family, and also with the other matters of Mr. Boston and the Essequibo Coast. The families did at that meeting raise their concerns to the president and have him know that they are first concerned with that independence of the RSS, and for second, being told that if it's independent, then if it should be the RSS or a consideration that the families may want to also think about as another independent option. The third thing that they suggested, if not, they would like to have some representative to be liaising with the independent body, whether RSS or if a choice is given to be part of that investigation. Those things were advanced at the meeting with the families. With reference to the waste management, yes, notices were served. In fact, the council at the moment is pursuing to have a new dump site to remove the current site from the Caracara Creek to the Cara Creek location. We have been waiting on both the EP and Ministry of Local Government. We've identified these locations, the new location, through GPS tracking. And we're waiting, which we were told that it is in this year's budget for the development of that waste management location. The importance of that is because Linden over the past 5 years have seen saw a proliferation of sawmills moving from 4 in the Amelia's Ward community to almost 20. Now that poses a significant problem with regards to waste material in such a close residential community and proximity. Our current waste site is unable at the moment to take that sort of waste deposit, and as such, those loggers have said to us that this is where they were depositing their sites. We have asked and we have had the intervention of the EPA, who have given directions for them to use the current site, but for us to hasten the development of the Dakara site. So I think that is where we are in terms of why we have that situation the way it is.
Thank you. Miss Davina?
Hello, good morning. This is Davina Bhagat with Kite Traders. My question is for Mr. Mahifal. Sir, are we likely to see government approach the National Assembly soon for a supplementary budget in light of these new financial measures that were announced by the president? And I'm speaking specifically about the education and the NIS. Also, while you spoke of the 10 billion allocation as a handout, what alternative would the PNCR suggest in that regard? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Approaching the National Assembly for supplementary can happen indeed, but then also you have what you call environments that are facilitated in budgetary allocations. I know that, for example, there are some sums that were approved in the National Assembly reference to some of the announcements that were made, like, for example, the increase in subvention to the local democratic organs. There is an allocated sum there of $2.8 billion. And when you consider what was announced, I think $50 million for municipalities and $30 million for NDCs, it will amount to about $2.6 billion. So there is still $200 million from that approved sum that we don't know what they will use it for. But you have situations where in the ministry now, they can move monies within lines that are within set programs. And if there isn't any consideration for what was announced, then it will require them to come to the National Assembly. So I hope that clarifies your first question. In terms of your second question, when you see there is when you see, for example, there is this one-off payment, and people may have contributed far way more than that one-off payment that they were going to get there. Uh, our thinking is that it could have been done in a manner of prorating, if that's the right word, in terms of distributing the benefits or the pensions to these people who are really and truly entitled to benefit in one way or another, because most times you find that sometimes it's not really their fault in its entirety. Take, for example, you have people who are working with companies that take out or deduct the NIS from their pay slip, and it is never remitted to the NIS. And when they do a follow up or they do a check and so on, they realize that they are shortchanged in terms of their contribution. Then you have some genuine cases of people who may have their names spelled incorrectly and they didn't pay attention. Most of the people who are going to benefit from this are 60 years and older. And if you go back to probably 30, 40 years when they began to work, they were not really too, focused on the spelling of their names. I personally have an uncle that is having some difficulties because of the spelling of his name. Then you have some basic logistical errors that are not necessarily the fault of the persons themselves, but they unfortunately are not are subject to the wrath of those errors. So we are thinking along the line of having a prorated sum adjustments to the law, of course, for it to be permitted, and to move in a direction of having a comprehensive study done to understand how is it that you can get the maximum benefits to the people who deserve it really and truly. But these sporadic one-off drop in the bucket kind of solution is really and truly not going to give the effect or give the positivity that you want to get from it. Take, for example, a person with 547 contributions. Um, they will be getting a one-off of $260,000. I'm sure their contribution was far way more than 260,000 Guyana dollars, and it's just a one-off. We should look at it in a more comprehensive way to see how we could facilitate them, even if it's at a prorated amount, and if it requires amending the laws and so on to facilitate for the benefit of the people. Because all in all, in everything we do at our policy level, in everything we do in government, in everything we do at the National Assembly and all around, it must be to the benefit of the people. And when we say benefit of the people, there's a greater focus here on ensuring that the vulnerable people gets maximum benefits. I trust I answered your questions.
Thank you. The floor is still open. Yes.
Sorry, may I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Harris, go ahead.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Mahipal, you spoke about the subventions to the NDCs and to the municipalities. At the same time, the Georgetown municipality is being prevented from raising money by virtue of perhaps hiking rates and taxes and all of that. At the same time, the government owes the municipality. Have you been able to calculate the government's indebtedness to the municipality? And have you compared that to the size of the subvention?
Okay, so let me say first of all, Adam, that $50 million subvention to Georgetown is inadequate. Georgetown's population, Georgetown's boundaries, and all the other factors, $50 million can never be sufficient. And it's kind of unfair to give Georgetown $50 million. New Amsterdam, Corriverton, Linden, Anna Regina, the 10 tongues, Bartica, Letem, Mabaruma, to give the 10 tongues an equal sum when the 10 tongues don't have the same factors in terms of what is necessary for them to enhance development in their respective areas. Georgetown is our capital city. Georgetown is the most populated. Georgetown is big in other senses. So Georgetown should have been considered separate. Linden is also a very populated town. Bartica is very populated also. So you need to look at these factors and make equitable distribution of the resources to enhance development. So I want to first of all say that that $50 million is inadequate. And I want to remind everyone here that the subvention was at one time $2 million for several years under the People's Progressive Party government. It was without oil when the APNU AFC came to office, and the Ministry of Communities, after having interactions with the LDOs, increased that subvention to NDCs, taking it to $5 million. And with townships, Georgetown was 30 million, and the other towns were $18 million or thereabout. So I want us to understand that aspect of it. You can't give across the board when they don't have the same factors at their disposal. The government is indebted to the Georgetown Mayor and City Council in the billions of dollars. The last figure I was aware of was $6.9 billion in taxes, rates and taxes. And government is, it's kind of strange that every year they're budgeting under a line item for rates and taxes, and they're not remitting this money to the Georgetown Mayor and City Council. So it's very unfair. They're not treating these LDOs with the respect that they deserve. The political interference and the political interventions at various different levels, the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, and then they have their imposed town clerks and other officers, the overseers and so on, is presenting the problem. The solution to our issues that we face at the level of our local authority areas is to remove government's direct political interference. Allow these LDOs the breathing space to function within the ambit of Chapter 2801 in the case of Georgetown and other towns, and 2802 in the case of LDO of NDCs. We need to remove the central government's authority and hand on these local bodies. And we cannot impose or have staff members in the sense of town clerks and overseers and so on being subject to the directive of political people and ministers of government. They should be subject to the direction of the council, and they're supposed to be serving as advisors to the council in keeping with what is the act and so on, and they're supposed to be meshing out those kind of things at their level. There's a law that covers for that. So it's very, very unfair, the treatment of central government and their interference, and that is what is presenting the issues that we have at these respective local democratic organs. I trust I answered your questions.
But Ganesh, if I may, um, these subventions, when given, they're tied to specific projects. The councils cannot decide on what projects they want to spend the 50 million on. I concur with Ganesh that part of the issue rests with the imposition of officers. In the case of Linden, and it is laughable that the town clerk that is imposed was, in fact, a challenger for the position of councillor in the area, and should have, if the PPP would have won, would have been their designated mayor. And herein lies the crux of the problem in respect of Linden. You have someone who is blatantly disregarding Chapter 2801, doesn't want to comply with instructions from the council. He sees himself as a law unto himself. There is the Amendment Act, which mandates councillors certain duties, one of which is to ensure that the council is managed by an effective, efficient, and competent town clerk. And in the case of the Linden Mayor and Town Council, that town clerk is doing the complete opposite. In Georgetown, however, more needs to be done in respect of helping the city council. Under the APNUAFC government in 2015 to 2020, we restored Georgetown through the restoration project, and we made Georgetown once again a garden city in the Caribbean. Now, a mere 4.5 years after, we've gone back to to being a garbage city, and that should not be. I believe that if we're to see any change in what occurs at the level of the municipalities and township, we need to once and for all get rid of this corrupt, incompetent government, the PPP civic government. Thank you.
And you do recall, Adam, that I think it was Jagdio who said that the $50 million is really to be spent on cemeteries and so on. Most of it on cemeteries, if I'm not mistaken. And when you look at some of these local government organs, look at Anna Regina, for example. The largest cemetery in that area is the La Belle Alliance Cemetery, which is not in a terrible state when compared to several other cemeteries. But they will be getting the $50 million, and they have to submit their proposal to satisfy the enhancement of the cemetery. And then you have other areas that have cemeteries that are in terrible states, yes, and they will be getting the same $50 million townships and $30 million as NDCs to enhance their cemeteries and so on. We have to allow these town councils, these NDCs, to function independent of central government and political interference. These local leaders were elected by their local communities, and they were elected in a constituency representative manner. Half of the council are constituency representatives, and the other half um, from the PR extraction. So the point I'm making is that these councillors have direct interaction with their constituencies, and the constituencies must make the representation as to what they would like to see in their respective communities enhanced and developed. Take, for example, right in Anne Regina, I'll go back, Anne Regina Town Council. And Lima doesn't have a cemetery, but Lima may have other um, infrastructure or other needs which the subvention can also cover. Richmond, Henrietta, Land of Plenty, those are other villages within the township, and they will have their their um, their situation that they will require attention on also, and it doesn't necessarily have to be related to cemeteries. So I'm saying give the councils and NDCs equitable distribution of resources, not that equal figure across the board based on their needs, and allow the councils to decide what the money should be spent on.
And just before you go to that, the before we get to that, there must be approach to have meaningful engagement with the councils. We cannot arrive at a $50 million, whether it's to be given as a subvention identified for particular projects, and not have the council given an opportunity to participate as outlined by the representative democracy of inclusionary participatory approach, where citizens are saying what they would like to see and councils are better able to advance that and those. But with line with the subvention for cemeteries in the case of Linden, in the next few months, our current cemetery is going to be out of space. And the council had already advanced where we would like to see a new cemetery constructed. Now, that is the subvention for that particular project. Outside of that, the council would be with many more consideration for issues to address, as we just recognized, whether it's fire. Last year, the last quarter, we had some significant flooding resulting in the damage of over $300 million, which we had identified across several communities, affecting over 200 households. Those things in themselves are not speaking to the council's ability for institutional strengthening and capacity building when we can just give monies without proper indulgence of consulting with councils so that we can understand the actual needs that those monies that will be required. So though the money is given and council will look forward for any increase given, I believe the approach must be one where councils are allowed the opportunity to participate and be able to craft what those monies would be given for.
Thank you. I
Can
see
I have a
the
follow-up, please?
I see the hand of Mr. Shamar. I'll let him go and then I'll take you.
Thank you. Shamar Mesa, the Guyana Chronicle. Um, Mr. Paul, on the topic of revenue and revenue generation at the municipal level, how do you view this current city council's proposed waiver of interest on taxes at a time when revenue is necessary? And also, with numerous reports of outstanding debt of about $6 billion to the City Hall that needs to be settled by the PNCR. What is the status of this?
Okay, so the General Secretary is here, so I trust he will answer the question that is directed to the PNCR. But before he goes, you talked about the council's decision to for waiver taxes. You said, can you go back the first question, please?
The City Council's proposed waiver of interest on taxes at
Proposed
a time
waiver.
when revenue is necessary.
Proposed waiver on taxes. You see, because of the issues that the city council is faced with, government not honoring their obligation, and then you have the constant political attacks and so on from the ministry, then you have the political intervention and determination by the ministry to the town clerk and so on. The council now is forced, or they are within a box, so to speak, and have to start making decisions that they feel is within their best interest to attract the revenue that they have to attract. And with all of this interest and so on, people are not paying, then you have to go to court. It's a long, drawn out system and so on. The council is trying their best to see how they can attract the taxpayers to come and pay their money. And I think that perhaps they are thinking along the line that if I am a businessman in Georgetown, and by no means am I a businessman in Georgetown, but if I have, let's say, $10 million outstanding in taxes and the accumulated interest carries it to, let's say, $22 million, and the council decides to say, listen, your interest has carried it to $22 million, but really your taxes is 10 million, come in and pay 15 million, 11 million, or they have taken a decision or whatever they have done to attract the taxpayers to get money. It is the government of Guyana that is forcing the council to do things like this because of their non cooperation with the council, because of their disdain and disrespect for the council, and because they just don't want to respect the elected officials at the local level. If you allow these councillors to function at their level, and you give them the wings to manage with the resources they need, then I think we're going to see something totally different. And mind you, as much as I am talking about giving the councils their independence, I am equally calling for the councils to be responsible in the manner in which they execute their functions, but they must not be forced to do one and the other is not being satisfied. They go hand in hand if you expect to see effective management, prudent financial management, and a comfortable environment to operate in. It goes hand in hand. So it's not one against the other. Both of them must go hand in hand. Allow them to function, and then they must be held accountable through the various apparatus that we have, the Auditor General conducting his audit, ensure that they spend within the manner in which it was approved, and so on. But the imposition of central government is responsible for the confusion that we see at Georgetown City and all the other LDOs across this country.
Thank you.
I must point out that the constitution of our country gives these councils autonomy to make certain decisions. And what we see with the imposition of the government is the removal of that autonomy from the councils. To answer the specific question of whether the PNC owes the council in excess of $6 billion taxes, as General Secretary of this party, I am unaware that we have such a debt. I ask if you have the information to present that to me, and we will take the necessary and appropriate action.
Just a follow up on amnesty with the issue of Georgetown. The Linden municipality, over the past several years, we have been granting amnesty at the anniversary of the tongue around the period of April, which we intend to do once again. Amnesty brings in for the council a large percentage of the outstanding rates and taxes as an intervention mechanism that promotes persons. We have had rates and taxes outstanding as far back as the early 80s. The issue of government's unwillingness to allow the autonomy of councils, even as it relates to the ability to increase rates and taxes, also allows for these sort of mechanisms where those outstanding taxes owed by persons who would have owned homes of quite some time and are paying outdated taxes but are not part of the system because of migration or debts. Those things are now allowing family members to now intervene and pay. However, for those new homes where people are now building and you're unable to apply new rates, multi-million dollar homes that are doing multi-million dollar business, you're still using those old rates, does not allow councils the opportunity to do valuation of properties so that we can assess to know how we can increase to allow for more rates and taxes to be generated. So those sort of conditions that are not allowed by central government first allows for persons to have to go after old rates and then with the restrictions unable to even apply new rates. Um, it's a very worrying situation when you have 2801 that clearly outlines what is allowed by the council and allow for councils to do with reference to even rates and taxes, and also the autonomy to regulate its business internal to the council.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis Chabot?
There's a question to the mayor of Linden as well as to Mr. Mahi Paul. In the case of Linden, how much money do you see would have been a reasonable provision other than the $50 million to foot your expenses in terms of dealing with matters in your town? And so, Mr. Mahi Paul, you said the figure is insufficient for Georgetown. What figure are you suggesting? And as I have you there, Mr. Mahi Paul, you talked about waivers, but then there were also waivers for political parties, a motion that was passed in the Georgetown City Council. How, on the one hand, could you cite the need for more revenue when at the same time you're giving up revenue opportunities? Example, I think one of the food companies is also given a waiver. Um, how do you rationalize this? You want money, but you're giving away money.
I just let me say, as it relates to what constitutes a sufficient amount, as mentioned by the GS earlier, subventions are welcome. However, subventions are tied to specific projects. So that in itself is one where we should have had a more engaged understanding of what particular projects the municipality would like to see executed at this particular time. But with reference to supporting the municipality in terms of what may be required in terms of raising resources, the Linden municipality is at a 50%, for example, staff capacity. Our constabulary, likewise, about 50%. 65% of our budget or over goes into salaries at this moment. We only recently increased to have the um, outstanding that was owed for increases for the period of 2020 to 2024. Those are at 26%. So those sort of situation need to have a proper sit down understanding with government with reference to the areas or the departments within the council one and also within the township of the ability of the council to build the capacity and have the institutions strengthened. Those things have to be considered, taking into consideration the budget of the council, the ability of the council to generate revenue, and what are the expenditure of the council. Those things must be first sit down and looked at before we can come up with a figure just to say $50 million. So we have just outlined to you, but we have submitted to the Ministry of Local Government our budget only last week and outlined to them where the shortfalls are and where we see we can increase more revenue, but where we believe even a subvention given will have to be increased as we are now pursuing the development of a new cemetery. So those things, even though you are adequacy, even the subvention now that we're embarking on developing a new cemetery would be inadequate.
Thank you, Dennis. Let me say that with reference to your question pertaining to political parties and taxes and so on, the General Secretary will answer that one. But with reference to the sum that you speak of, that I think is adequate, you see, it requires consultation with these local democratic organs. It requires sitting with them, having a dialogue. The APNU, AFC, when we were in government for I think we did it in 2016 and in 2018. I could be mistaken with reference to the years. But we had a conference you would call an NCLDO, a National Conference of Local Democratic Organs, where we brought together all municipalities and NDCs. At the time, I think it was 72 or 73 in 2016 or somewhere thereabout, but it eventually reached to where it is right now, which is 80 LDOs. And in those discussions, for example, you would recall that is what led to us increasing the subventions, first of all, moving it from $2 million, which it was at the PPP when we took over from the PPP in 2015. It went to $5 million. Then there was also the introduction of grants. So NDCs and municipalities were getting grants. That discussion also is what led to the salaries of chairmen of the respective RDCs going to 300,000, vice chairs to 260 something. I think there were allowances that went to mayors and deputy mayors also, where they were increased. The hinterland mayors and deputy mayors got a higher figure than the coastline mayors and deputy mayors. Town clerks and overseers, they also saw a significant increase in their packages also in terms of their benefits, and several other interventions happened. Also, I think the Georgetown Restoration Program was birthed out of that consultative process also. I'm saying all of that to say to you that there is need for the elected officials to sit, for them to have a dialogue with government, and for them to make the representation upon how they will approach various projects, and the figure can be met at that level. And then we have to also take into consideration what the law says in terms of the Fiscal Transfers Act. The Fiscal Transfers Act specify that the percentage that must be given up front, then another percentage that must be calculated based on several factors, which include the geography of the area, the population of the area, the infrastructure present in the area, and several other critical factors, which also includes the percentage of rates collection. So all of these factors, the Fiscal Transfers Act, I don't have it in front of me, but I can tell you that if it is brought into being, if life is given to the Fiscal Transfers Act, then you will be able to see how these municipalities and NDCs and so on can benefit better. And I think it specifically speaks, that act specifically speaks to Georgetown and subventions. Thank you.
To answer the question in respect of political parties being given waivers, Dennis, it requires an understanding of the tax regime that is employed by the particular uh, town council. At the moment, I'm aware that political parties are been paying business rate, are required to pay business rate when they are actually not businesses. And whether I don't want to appear to be duplicitous in this matter. I think political parties should be given a different tax regime in terms of rates and taxes. And I see it as a positive step been taken by the municipality of Georgetown to have that in force. And I don't see that we are in any way reneging on paying our fair share. But I don't think the political parties should pay the same rates as businesses because we're not businesses in essential.
Do you hope that under this regime that MICWAC will receive a waiver?
I don't know what you're talking about, Dennis. If you have that information,
MICWAC
perhaps.
being the holding company for your party's properties?
Dennis, that's a separate question. I don't understand why the question is coming, but if it requires, then so be it.
But MICWAC is a business. How do you rationalize the two?
I
MICWAC is a registered business, while your party is a party. How do you see your party ultimately benefiting?
Dennis,
with MICWAC
we're comparing chalk to cheese. I'm limiting my comments to the fact that political parties are given a different rate, and I'm not sure whether what you're talking about in respect of MICWAC being a holding company for the political party to which I belong. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Miss Tammy. I see the hand.
Final question.
1 second. I see the hand of a name by the name of Tammy.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Tammy Garnett from the Guyana Times. My question is directed at Mr. Benjamin. You just said that the current amount that your party owes to the city council is not $6 billion. Can you clarify then how much does the PNCR owe city council, if anything? And can you say if you have any plan on paying this amount, or if you're in any discussions with the city council on a payment plan, or what stage the situation is at? And I have another question after.
Thank you, Ms. Garnett. Look, I don't know at this point in time what the amount is. But once that information is presented to me, the PNCR is a proud party and we intend to pay our debts. We will pay what we have to pay once it falls within the confines of the law,
If there is any.
if there is any.
All right.
Okay, a follow up to that. This issue of the taxes owed by the PNCR has been in the news for some time. Is there a particular reason why you're not as yet aware of the amount, but that you do know that it's not $6 billion? So what if you don't know the amount? How are you clearly guaranteed that it's not $6 billion?
You know what your rates and taxes are every year, and so I know that it isn't 6 billion. Right?
All right. At this time, I see two other hands.
Has the
One,
party discussed the
Miss
rate of
Tammy,
taxes
Miss Tammy,
time?
Miss Garnett.
Yes.
I have two other hands that are waiting
But
to
I had
ask.
another question.
As I'm saying, we have two other hands, and I'll permit them their one question each, and then I have Mr. Harris as well, and I'll come back to you with your one question before we wrap up because we're sharply running out of time. So I will go with Mr. Shamar, Miss Davina, in fact, Shamar, Mr. Harris, then Davina, in that order.
All right. I just wanted to follow up from what Mr. Sharma said. And I just need some clarification. You're saying that new home builders should be charged a higher rate of tax? Is that what you're saying?
I'm
From your
saying
previous comment.
no. I'm saying that now we have these outdated taxes. We should bring everyone in line with what is current in terms of modern tax regime. A more modern tax regime should be looked at, especially when we are looking at, in the case of Linden, you have several housing schemes that have been completed and not been handed over to the council. And you have current building of or construction of buildings, both commercial and residential, that the council doesn't have any idea as to how their application will be in terms of service and management. Some will require more services than others. And as I said, those are things that must be looked at in any new valuation structure of not only existing or past property, but current and properties that are being developed. That is where I believe the council is trying to look in terms of revenue generation and new rates and taxes.
Thank you. Mr. Harris?
My question has to go to Mr. Solomon. You said in the discussions the president talked about independent investigators and he spoke of the Regional Security System, I think RSS.
Yes.
When the RSS was last here in connection with the killing of the Henry brothers, it said that they couldn't get information from the police and it couldn't complete a thorough investigation. This was ventilated by the Guyana Human Rights Association. What do you think is going to be different if the RSS should come this time?
Let me just say upfront on behalf of the family and at that meeting, the concerns still remain of the role of the RSS. I would continue to advance that if the option was given for an independent investigation, then to say the RSS doesn't constitute independent. Instead, it's saying what the direction the investigation will go in. And as you outlined, those concerns of past investigations done by the RSS were raised. And I believe, as I said before, those are the sort of approaches that are being considered by government and are taken by government that the community continues to be very concerned about. Not only the families who've expressed that and those, however, the entire community with reference to ensuring that justice is given and pursued in a manner that you see an outcome. In fact, that is where the most contentious part of the engagement with the president was, to have the terms of reference. I'm glad that you had other advisors there, including Mr. Gravayo, who had given that commitment that we will have the terms of reference even before we have the investigation. So I'm expecting, and I think not only for Linden, but the rest of this country should look forward to having those terms of reference that not only clearly outlines what the investigation will look like, but what that independent investigating arm is expected to do, whether it's RSS. Before I get to that, there were two officers sent to the community, and Deputy Commissioner Mark Bean and the officer Mr. Howell from the GDF, who had also pointed out that there are options that are available in terms of the pursuit of an independent investigation. I think those were some of the things that the families went into the meeting after demanding the president be present in Linden. And those were things advanced in terms of not only the RSS, but the option to also have an independent body that is going to be looked at, and the presence of not only family members, but those legal persons identified by the families to be part of any such investigation.
Thank you. Ms. Davina?
Thank you. I have a follow-up question to what Mr. Solomon just said, and then I'll go with my substantive. Mr. Solomon, forgive me if I missed it, but did family members raise their concerns with the president regarding the RSS? And for perhaps Mr. Mahipal, I'm seeking an update kindly on the talks with the AFC. Could you say if a decision is likely soon regarding a coalition? Thanks.
Yes, it was the elder brother of Mr. Fodjene, Mr. Sian Fodjene, who first brought that to the attention of Deputy Commissioner Mark Bean and Mr. Howell. After that was first advanced at the Haimara Park engagement, and subsequent it was said to the president by Mr. Fodjene again that based on his observations and the family's observations that were made with the Henry's outcome and several other cases, that they were very concerned. This was expressed by the family of the role and the participation of the RSS in any further investigation.
Thank you.
Let me say, Davina.
Just before you go, Mr. Mahipal, just
Miss-
before you go, Mr. Mahipal, Mr. Solomon, you're saying that this was raised with the police and not necessarily
It
the
was
president?
raised with the president at the meeting that I was present at the Watuka Club. It was raised once again by Mr. Sian Fodjene and several other family members.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, as I was saying, the talks with the AFC are ongoing. In terms of where we are, I would like to believe we are in a better position than when we first started, and I will go as far as to say that nothing is agreed to until all is agreed. So unless we conclude, I can't go further than to say that nothing is agreed until all is agreed. What I do know, and that is that the PNCR and the APNU reposed confidence in Aubrey Compton Norton as the presidential candidate. And if there is any change from that, it is Mr. Norton who would have to make that change. So the party and the APNU, the partnership, reposed that confidence in him, and that's because we feel very confident that he possesses what is necessary to take us over the line.
Okay, are you working with a renewed timeline as to an announcement in that regard?
Their exchanges that are happening between the two sides. There isn't any focus necessarily on a direct timeline, but I can tell you that we have progressed significantly from where we were when we first began.
All
Can you
right,
say
thank
whether
you.
the PNC has responded to the AFC's proposal?
Thank you, Dennis. But of course, I must put in this part too. The moderator, Ms. Shanika, and the interaction. And so it must be respectful, cordial, and orderly. But I thank you for your question nonetheless. And I will say to you, yes, we have responded, and our communication between the AFC and ourselves, we are having lots of communications, so to speak. But it remains confidential. It's a process. We are engaged in proper discourse. We want to ensure that we have the Guyanese people's interests at heart. We want to ensure that there is an advancement in terms of understanding on both sides, especially with the Mr. Norton's people-centered development strategy and how he intends to ensure that that is pushed. And because at the end of the day, whatever is agreed to must have the Guyanese people's interest at heart. The fight, the dialogue, the back and forth, everything, however you want to put it, at the end of the day, the beneficiaries of everything that happened must be the people of Guyana. And that is what we are also discussing and so on. And again, I will reiterate, nothing is agreed until all is agreed. So even if we have 999 things agreed upon and one isn't agreed on, nothing is agreed until all is agreed.
Thank you very much. And as promised, I will allow Ms. Garnett her final question as we close today's press.
That's okay. Thank you very much for coming back to me when my question was answered.
It was answered.
Just
Okay.
before,
Thank you so
I
much.
think Mayor wants to say something
Yes,
before
he
we
can
close.
go ahead.
so just let me say clearly, I know the question was asked about the RSS, but let me establish at the meeting what was done at the request of and the demand. It wasn't a request, it was a demand because a plane was sent to take the families and including myself, and an offer was made to come to Georgetown on the 18th, which was refused, the 8th, which was refused, and as such demanded the presence of the president in Linden, who came to Linden at the Watuka Club. At that meeting, we were very clear, even though I see the issue of a handshake making the rounds, unnecessarily so. I think what was clear was that we were going to have an independent investigation. It was suggested by the president, it was going to be done by the RSS. Support for the victims and their families, which the government committed to provide social support and care for the families of the victim, including covering the full cost of the burial arrangements and other related assistance. And as I said earlier, the terms of reference for the investigation will be established in a consultation with the parties. We were told the families were going to have an opportunity to be able to participate in that. With the scope and structure of the investigation as to be agreed on, no specific timelines were given by the president. The recommendations also were made for the police reform in the region, as we recognize that this seems to be an habitual approach when it comes to policing within the town of Linden and the region as a whole. And we also recognize not only from the 18th of July, but several other recommendations that those requests for reforms must be pursued. The council and the family remains committed to ensuring that our approach to seeing a very impartial investigation be conducted, and at the same time, the timely dissemination of information that will ensure that the public keep at a sense of ease, knowing that what is going to be done is that justice will be served. Thank you very much.
One
Thank you so
hopes,
much.
though, one hopes that with all that is going on, that this government do not politicize this issue and make politics of it, that it delivers on whatever it promised, that is to have a fair, impartial, and transparent investigation. We do not want a situation as occurred in or in Boston situation in Dartmouth. We do not want a situation that occurred with the Henry boys. We want to see justice, for justice delayed is justice denied. And we want to ensure that this government bring to justice those that are guilty of killing these innocent lives. A man is innocent until proven otherwise. This guy, Peters, was not given an opportunity to prove his innocence. And therefore, one needs to take that into account when dealing with this matter.
Thank you. I want to thank our guests on the panel today, and of course, our media personnel and our viewing audience and all our social media platforms. Thank you so much, and do have a wonderful afternoon and weekend.